Varying interest rates as the third subtopic under the compound interest topic. In many instances, more than one interest rate for a given investment is charged. This happens when a time period is divided into different time periods with varying interest rates. So may mga cases tayo na yung mga interest rates natin within a certain period or a certain time, hinati-hati siya. For example, sa isang part ng period ko, ganitong percentage, ganitong rate. Sa pangalawang part, ganito naman yung percentage rate. And in this computation of the compound amount and compound interest value is based on each time period with its corresponding interest rate. So for example, may isa tayong situation dito, finding F, if a deposited value P paying a varying interest within 9 years, where in the first 2 years pays A% compounded quarterly, the next 3 years with B% compounded semi-annually, and the last 4 years with C% compounded monthly. So, it says here that yung 9 years natin, 9 years na period, hinati natin sa tatlo. Yung first 2 years, A% yung J or yung interest rate, compounded quarterly. Yung second part naman, for the next 3 years, B% compounded semi-annually, and for the last 4 years, C% compounded monthly. So yung gagamitin natin na formula is the compound interest. For example, when I'm going to find for F, on the first scenario, the first 2 years pays 8% compounded quarterly. Kung kukunin ko yung F dito, that is the F1 or yung future worth on the first period. So that is equal to P times 1 plus I raised to N. Okay, so I1 meaning yung first interest natin and N is the number of frequency. And sa statement natin, P times 1 plus A, ito yung ating J. Okay, yung A natin is J over 4 kasi yung M natin is quarterly. Raised to 2 kasi 2 years times 4. Then that is M. Then finding for F2, yung itong nakapula, the next 3 years with B% compounded semi-annually, 3 years yung ating T, which is ang exponent natin dito. B% is our J. Compounded semi-annually, that is our M. Itong nasa baba at itong nasa exponent natin. So F2 is equal to F1 times 1 plus I raised to N. Yung F1 natin, kung ano yung nakuha natin dito sa first period na F, yun yung ating present value sa F2. And for our F3, kung ano yung nakuha nating F2 dito, magiging present value natin dito sa ating F3. Okay? So, F3, finding for F3, that is, etong naka-blue, the last 4 years with C% compounded monthly, F3 is equal to F2 times 1 plus C over 12 kasi monthly, raised to 4 kasi 4 years times 12. And combining all those, in order for us to form a single formula out of those, galing sa F3, which has a formula of F2 times 1 plus I3 raised to N3. Okay, yung third I natin tsaka yung third number of frequency natin. Substituting again the formula for F2, which is eto, F1 times 1 plus I raised to N, magiging ganito yung formula natin. So, nadagdag natin ito as the value of the F2. And of course, may value din tayo ng F1 para dito. So, isa-substitute din natin siya. That is P times 1 plus I1 raised to N 1. So, ito yung magiging formula natin in cases that we are only having 3 sets of interest rate. Okay, yan yung tinatawag na varying interest rate. At kung lumampas man sa 3, of course, magdadagdag pa tayo ng kung anumang interest rate meron siya at pati yung number of frequency using the compound amount or the present value formula. And kung yan yung compound amount formula natin in varying interest rates, Para naman sa present value formula, kung unknown yung P with varying interest rates, ito yung ating gagamitin. So take note, the same concept doon sa ating compound interest formula, dapat naka-negative yung ating exponent when it comes to finding P. Okay, so for example, Mr. Matias deposited 450,000 in a bank. It paid 6% interest compounded quarterly during the first 3 years. Ito yung first set natin. First J, yung M natin is 4 quarterly, then yung T natin is 3 years. 6.5% interest compounded monthly for the next 4 years. Ito yung pangalawang situation natin. Yung pangatlo, 8% interest compounded annually for the last 2 years. How much would he have in his account by the end of 9 years, assuming no withdrawals were drawn? So yung given na 450,000 is our P, kasi yung tinatanong how much would he have by the end of 9 years. So that is our F or our compound amount. So finding for F, ito yung tatlong sets ng given natin. J1, M1, and T1, J2, M2, and T2, and J3, M3, and T3. So first, kung gusto nating isa-isahin itong tatlo, pwede naman, in finding for I or I1, that is equal to J1 over M1, J1 is 0.06 over 4, that is equal to 0.015. For I2, of course, J2 over M2 naman. J2 is 0.065 over 12, that is equal to 0.0054. Then our I3, that is J3 over M3, 0.08 over 1, that is equal to 0.08. Then inonote natin itong values ng tatlo. And next, based sa ating formula, may isa pa tayong kailangang kunin na value which is our N. For N1, that is T1 M1. T1 is 3 years times 4, that is 12 periods. For N2, T2 times M2, that is 4 times 12, that is 48. And N3, T3 over M3, that is equal to 2 times 1 or 2. Then, inonote din natin yung mga values na yan. So, in substitution for our formula, okay, so, magagamit natin yung binigay kong formula kanina para sa tatlong sets ng varying interest rates. So, substitute natin since kompleto na tayo sa values. Our P is 450,000 times 1 plus 0.015 raised to 12 times 1 plus 0054 raised to 48 and times 1 plus 0.08 raised to 2. And that results, yung mga nasa loob ng parenthesis natin, this values results to this. Etong value natin na to results to this. And 1 plus 0.08, that is 1.08. Then raising it to the exponents, yung magiging result nito is 1.1956. Yung magiging result naman nito, 1.295. And magiging result nito is 1.1664. The more decimal places we have, the more accurate answer that we can obtain. So kung i-multiply natin itong 4, that is equal to 812,672 pesos and 75 centavos. That is our future amount. The next example, Mr. Rosas withdrew 650,000 pesos from the bank after depositing it for 10 years. His initial savings yielded interest at 9% interest compounded semi-annually during the first 2 years, 10% interest compounded quarterly for the next 5 years, and 8% interest compounded annually for the last 3 years. How much did he originally deposit assuming no withdrawals were drawn? So, yung mga given natin, inonote natin siya. So, our F is 650,000 pesos kasi ito yung withdraw niya sa bangko after 10 years. So, yung hinahanap natin, yung original deposit ni Mr. Rosas. That is our P. What if ayokong isa-isahin itong tatlo in finding for I and in finding for N? Diretso ko na siyang i-substitute sa aking formula, okay, which is the same formula pa din kasi tatlong varying interest pa din tayo. Finding for I, of course, that is J over M. Pwede ko nang isubstitute yung J over M dito sa aking mga I. And for N, pwede ko ding isubstitute yung T times M ko sa formula. So, magiging ganyan yung ating formula. Negative yung ating mga exponents since we are going to find for the value of the P. So, substitute natin diretso. F is 650,000 pesos times 1 plus 0.09 our J1 over 2 kasi semi-annually raised to negative 2 for 2 years then semi-annually 2. For the second varying interest rate, 1 plus 0.10 our J2 over 4 quarterly siya raised to negative 5 for 5 years then quarterly again for 4 times for our third interest rate 1 plus 0.08 our J3 over 1 annually raised to negative 3 for 3 years times 1. So that results yung ating mga fractions, itong 0.09 divided by 2 is 0.045, 0.10 divided 4 is 0.025, 0.08 divided 1 is of course 0.08. Then 2 times 2 is 4, 5 times 4 is 20, then 3 times 1 is 3. Then adding the values inside the parentheses, 1 plus 0.045 is 1.045. This value has 1.025, the sum. 1 plus 0.08 is 1.08. And that is equal to 264,058 pesos and 18 centavos. So as much as possible, yung sinabi ko kanina, iwasan nating mag-round off sa ating decimal values. Okay? Especially kung ang ating exponent is naka-negative. Very sensitive yung ating final answer kung magra-round off tayo. Kasi kung isang decimal place lang yung nawala dyan, automatic mag-change na yung ating answer. So you have to be careful on that. Mag-iiba na yung value ng answer ninyo. And magtataka kayo kung in cases wala sa choices yung inyong na-solve, kahit tama naman yung inyong solution. Okay, so again, you have to be careful on rounding off decimal numbers, especially in finding for P because our exponent are all negative. For our third example, to provide his son's education, Mr. Lopez deposited 45,000 pesos in a cooperative. It was invested at 7% compounded daily for the first 5 years, 8% compounded quarterly for the remaining years. How much will he have for his son's tuition fees if the money was invested for 10 years? Okay, so ang hinahanap natin again dito is yung F. Okay, kasi yung tinatanong, how much will he have if the money was invested for 10 years. So, yung dineposit niya is 45,000 pesos which is our P. And in our first interest rate, 7% compounded daily, take note, we are going to use the continuous compounding formula. Kasi compounded daily yung sinabi sa first interest rate. Then next is 8% compounded quarterly. We can use the compound amount formula here. For the first interest rate, in-indicate yung T natin which is 5 years. Yung sa second interest rate natin for the remaining years. But we can count, okay, we can find the remaining years by subtracting 10 minus the first interest period which is the 5 years. So yung remaining years para sa second interest rate period natin is also 5 years. So T1 is 5 years, T2 is equal to 5 years also. So by that, since dalawang interest rate lang meron tayo, that is P times 1 plus I1 raised to N1 times 1 plus I2 raised to N2. And take note, hindi natin magagamit itong 1 plus I1 raised to N1 kasi compounded daily nga siya. So papalitan natin ng continuous compounding formula for F. So that is F is equal to P times E raised to J1 T1, okay? times 1 plus j2 over m2 raised to t2 m2. So this is the compound amount formula, okay, in finding for f in our second interest rate, and for our first interest rate, continuous compounding formula yung ginamit natin. Then, substitute sa mga values, 45,000 times e raised to 0.07 times 5 times the quantity of 1 plus 0.08 over 4 raised to 5 times 4. And then, 0.07 times 5, itong exponent ng ating e results to 0.35. Then, 0.08 divided by 4 is 0.02. 5 times 4 is 20. And then, if we are going to add 1 and 0.02, that is 1.02, and raising e to the power of 0.35, that results to 1.419, and 1.02 raised to 20, that is 1.4859. So multiplying the three quantities, that results to 94,889 pesos and 69 centavos. That is our F. For our fourth example, discount 480,000 pesos in 8 years if interest is charged at 6% compounded continuously for the first 4 years and at 6.5% converted daily for the remaining years. So discount, meaning we have to find for the value of P, or the present value, given the F, which is 480,000 pesos in 8 years. 8 years, hinati natin sa dalawa. Yung first interest rate period natin is 4 years. So yung remaining years ng pangalawa will be also 4 years. So yung given F is 480,000, J1 is 0.06, T1 is 4 years, J2 is 0.065, T2 is 4 years. And if you can notice, parehong continuous compounding yung ating gagamitin dito. Since the first interest period will be compounded continuously and the second will be converted daily. So using which has the present value formula, okay, for the compound present value, but sinabi dito that we are going to use the continuous compounding formula, so papalitan natin itong dalawa. So finding for P, F times E raised to negative J1 T1 times E raised to negative J2 T2. And substitute sa lahat ng values natin. F is 480,000. E raised to negative 0.06, that is our J1, times T, which is 4 years. Then, for our second interest period, E raised to negative 0.065 times 4. Okay, so yung exponent natin, yung first exponent will result to 0.24. Yung second exponent is 0.26. And that results to 291,134 pesos and 72 centavos. So as much as possible, kung kaya nang i-compute ng calcu ninyo, yung ganitong input, i-input nyo na siya para maiwasan natin yung error when it comes to giving values with decimal places sa ating mga isosolve. So kailangan accurate yung magiging answer natin. Again, especially finding for P and our exponent are all negative. So that ends our third subtopic under compound interest, the varying interest rate. So for your questions, just comment down on our discussion section.